Today we're going to talk about, does it make sense to get a guardian or tough breed dog as your first dog? And I say tough breed, we could, guardian dogs, herding dogs, there's a lot of tough breeds out there. But overall, does it make sense to get a challenging dog for your first dog, or should you get something easier? So this is unscripted. We're going to jump into a lot of things today. I'm sure things I say are probably going to make a lot of people mad. Certainly not the intention, but I'm going to give you my honest opinion here. We're going to talk about a lot of breeds. Overall, when we talk about tough breeds, I mean, there's tons of them, right? German Shepherds for sure, Rottweilers, Malinois, Pit Bulls, any sort of bulldog, Akitas. I mean, the list goes on and on. So I'm gonna try not single out too many individual breeds. Unfortunately, when we talk about breeds, sometimes people, will jump down your throat if you dare to say anything negative about their breed. And I want to be clear here. I'm not trying to talk negative about any breeds today, but I'm going to tell you not every breed makes sense for a new owner, right? That's how people get bit. That's how children get killed. That's how dog fights happen. You might not like it, but it's true, right? So we need to think about that stuff. Overall, we all know the breed that people worry about the most, but also the people that there's some of the very small, tiny vocal minority of their owners freak out if you ever, say they're not perfect, and that's pit bulls. And I'll tell you right now, I don't hate the breed whatsoever. I've owned one in the past. It's not, my favorite breed, but there's a lot of breeds that are not my favorite breed. Here's the thing, when you say a pit bull's not perfect, this small minority of pit bull owners will freak out, right? And they'll say, you're a monster, I've got this dog who's super nice. Most pit bull owners don't do that though, right? If you go up to a reasonable pit bull owner and you say, should everybody get one? They say no. And same for so many other breeds. So my dogs, one is a cattle dog. I'll be the first to tell you, if you haven't had dogs before, you're insane to get an Australian cattle dog. My other one is a Akita lab mix. Another one. If you've never had a dog, that is crazy to go get that mix. You're just asking for trouble. So as I talk about these breeds, hopefully you think it through and you understand here that there's a lot of breeds that don't make sense for first-time owners, and reasonable owners of these breeds and reasonable breeders understand that. So I think, I'm just going to say, any breeder that sells a really challenging breed dog to a first-time owner is doing them a huge disservice. I can't say that enough. It makes no sense to me. So if you breed Akitas and you're selling Akitas to someone who's never owned a dog before or has no dog experience, that is stupid. And honestly, sometimes it hits the point of being criminal. So we look at all these, these dog attacks that are out there, whether it's, dogs attacking, like right now, the UK big, right? The XL bully is in the news and some horrific attacks over there. We also see, I live in Tennessee, just, a year or so ago, some kids were killed by pit bulls and their family. But other breeds as well, right? You see Rottweilers attacking people, and there's so many breeds that do this, and there's really a few reasons for it. So one is improper breeding, and unfortunately we see that a lot, right? Where you have these breeders that, in my opinion, they're not trying to push aggression out of the gene pool, they're trying to pull it back in. So they're breeding these aggressive dogs on purpose. And that's kind of the worst case scenario, right? Because when you get a dog that has been bred to be aggressive, and that's the goal of the breeder, guess what? Your dog is probably going to be aggressive, and it doesn't matter if you go out and socialize it. It doesn't matter if you train it a lot. If this dog has that in its genetics, that it's bred to fight, and it's been encouraged to fight, it's probably going to fight, right? And that's a huge issue. Another problem we see is dogs not being socialized, even if they're from a good breeder. You get a San Akita from a great breeder who has not been breeding them to be aggressive. They've been trying to breed good family dogs. You get it, you don't socialize it, you're going to have problems with it, or most likely going to have problems. We also see it with some people that, purposely don't socialize it, right? And that's where a lot of the killings come from, especially what I'm seeing out of the UK right now. These are people that are not trying to raise, well-socialized, friendly dogs, right? They're trying to raise guard dogs, and they are, and the guard dogs are killing people, and that's going to continue until we figure out something with people, right? To figure out breeders should not be breeding aggressive dogs on purpose. If they have one in the line that has aggression, that dog should not be bred, right? It should be neutered or spayed, whatever, and, never bred again. But that's not what's happening. Sometimes they're trying to make them aggressive. Other times they say, well, yeah, he's aggressive, but man, he's big, right? He's super cool looking, he's Merle, he's whatever, and let's just breed him anyways. And we see that a lot with white shepherds. People love their white shepherds, and unfortunately I've seen some breeders that breed sketchy dogs with, nerve issues, right? These are not dogs that should be bred, and to be clear, I don't mean all white shepherds, right? I'm talking about, sometimes people get this white shepherd that has issues and they say, hey, I think I could sell the puppies for a lot of money, I'm going to breed them. and then all of a sudden we see lots of white shepherds with issues, right? And this happens with other breeds as well. So there's a host of issues going on here. But the one I really wanted to talk about today and want you to think about is, should you get a tough breed dog as a first-time dog owner? And the answer is no. Absolutely not. You shouldn't. And I want you to think about some things. So genetics matter, right? No matter how you cut it, and I'm not anti any of these breeds I've mentioned, but no matter how you cut it, a Rottweiler or a Pit Bull or a Malinois is not a golden retriever. It doesn't matter to me what you say in response, right? They're not. And I'm not against these breeds. I've mentioned I've got 2 tough breed dogs. My cattle dog is not a golden. Why? Goldens are bred to be soft temperaments, right? They're bred to be easy. I call Goldens the dogs you can't mess up. It's pretty hard to mess up a golden. Cattle dogs, you can mess up a cattle dog when you're trying hard. They're not an easy breed. So, you need to understand breeds are different, right? So when you're a first-time dog owner and you see this dog and you're like, oh my gosh, that's really cool. Look at that tough, neat-looking dog, and they say it's friendly. I should get one of those. Do your research. Do not get a Cane Corso or a Rot or an Akita. It just makes absolutely no sense. And I could talk about this for hours. I'll give you an example, a non-dog related example. You need to learn, right? You need to build up your skill set. So when I was a kid, I was in Boy Scouts and we shot guns quite a bit. But they didn't start us on big, powerful guns, right? Where did we start? BB guns. And we learned on a BB gun and treated it like a real gun, right? Eye protection, ear protection, learning everything, right? How to hold it, all kinds of rules about gun safety. And you fired that BB gun all summer long at scout camp. That's what you worked on, right? And when you got good enough with the BB gun, then you graduated to a 22, and it was a really big deal. And you learned on that for quite a while, and then you moved on to a shotgun. They didn't give, a 10-year-old or however old I was a shotgun and say, hey, good luck, here's how you use it, right? You learn through time. And there's so many other examples. Think about cars. You don't get your 16-year-old boy a Dodge Viper, right? They're going to kill themselves. They're not going to understand how to operate it properly. They're going to get overconfident. They're going to get kind of out over their skis, and they're going to make mistakes. What do you get a 16-year-old boy? I don't know. When my kid hit 16, probably a minivan, right? Something safe, something easy to handle, something forgiving. So these tough dog breeds, they're not easy to handle. They're not forgiving. They're a challenge. And that becomes the problem, that as a first-time owner, you go out and you get a dog and you don't know anything, right? And this is not like indicting people that have never had dogs and saying, you're dumb or you should, learn a lot more. Some things you do kind of learn as you go, but you want an easy breed that's hard to mess up. So first-time owner, get a golden, right? Get a lab, get a King Charles Spaniel, get something easy, right? As opposed to a tough breed. And I'm sure there's people watching right now that are already like typing responses, if anyone's watching this, I guess, but the ones that are probably typing responses of like all these things I've said that have made them mad, or, telling me that I had a, Pit Bull as my first dog, or I had a Rottweiler as my first dog and they were great. Awesome. Love it. I'm glad they were great and I'm glad you didn't have issues. But I do this for a living full time. I am called in to clean up the aftermath of this stuff all the time. And it's sad, right? Where someone gets this dog, they raise it, they have issues, and now all of a sudden the dog hurts somebody, or the dog is neurotic, right? Or the person's scared of them. And now they're talking about euthanizing the dog or rehoming the dog. And very often I look at it and my thought is, if you hadn't gotten a Malinois, if you had gotten a golden retriever, I don't think you'd be in this position. I think everything would be fine. So that's one of the challenges. What I see is people that have more experience with dogs, they do a couple things. One, they train them better, right? Because they have more experience. They socialize them better. Of course, they work really hard at it. But on top of that, they make better decisions. So picture, if you think of when you were growing up, let's say my family had Goldens when I was growing up, super easy dogs, right? And when we were left with a 13-year-old babysitter, the dog was out. No big deal, right? It's a Golden. When you have a challenging breed dog, people I know that have 2 or 3 Akitas, guess what? When they have a babysitter over a 12 or 13-year-old kid, watching their kids, they don't leave the Akitas loose. They just don't. Why? Because those dogs are not supposed to be managed by children. Now, you could make the argument a Golden shouldn't be managed by children either, and that's probably a good argument to make, but Goldens are pretty forgiving. It's hard to get a Golden to bite you, right? You've got to really mess up there. Pretty easy to mess up with an Akita or many other breeds. So people that do well with these guardian breeds, they've learned a lot along the way, right? They've, learned how to socialize a dog. They've learned how to train it, but they also make smart decisions. And they're making smart decisions on how they care for the dog on a daily basis. when they have a big party and there's going to be people at the house and maybe people are drinking or there's, 100 people around, guess what? Their dogs usually are not out, and they're not out unsupervised for sure. Why? Because they're guarding breed dogs. That's asking for trouble. You have a Rottweiler, I don't care if they're friendly and they're super nice, loose in your house and you've got 100 people around they don't know, you're asking for trouble. Someone to grab that dog, someone to hug that dog, someone to, do something silly and open his mouth and pretend to make him talk. Who knows what someone's going to do, right? And people that have guardian or tough breed dogs and succeed with them have learned that stuff. Hopefully not the hard way, but through time they've learned those are not smart decisions with my dog, so I'm going to do something different. They also usually make smarter decisions when meeting new dogs. So most people I know with a more challenging breed dog, they don't just, walk up to a dog park and let their dog go, right? That's asking for trouble. They probably don't go to dog parks at all, and they're probably socializing their dog with other dogs they know are friendly rather than just hoping for the best. And when it comes to breeds, you have to know your breeds, right? They're also watching other dogs. So if they've got a huge male Rott and they see another big male dog coming down the street, their first thought is, uh-oh, that could be a problem, right? Their first thought is not, well, I've got a Rott and my Rott is nice, so that Rott's going to be nice. That is stupid logic. That makes no sense. So I have a cattle dog, right? I'm walking him down the street and I see a cattle dog coming. I'm not saying like, oh, a cattle dog, I bet he's going to be so nice like my dog. My dog is nice, right? Loves the family, loves children, loves other dogs. I don't trust that dog, that cattle dog coming to me. I don't trust him this much, right? Until he's earned my trust. And you have to think about that because picture you have a golden and your golden's on leash and you walk by that other cattle dog and it lunges at your golden and it surprises you because you didn't expect it. So you get your golden away, probably no issue, right? But if you're not paying attention and you've got a cattle dog on the leash or a Rott Akita mix, right? And you're walking them and that dog lunges and you don't have control of your dog and you don't know your dog and you don't know dog behavior, dog fight, right? That's how they happen. Now all of a sudden you have two dogs locked up, tangling on the street, and you've got a nightmare scenario that you've got to break up. So think about the breeds. And when we talk about, we've made some videos lately on how to survive a dog tack and the ban in the UK of the XL bully. You have to know breeds and you have to think about them. So I get a lot of questions on people saying like, would you own this breed? Would you trust that breed? And I like dogs, right? And I like many different breeds. But if I see a loose dog, I don't trust it. And do I think about the breed or do I discriminate against the breed? Yeah, absolutely, right? I'm out walking and I see an Akita loose out in the wild and walking down the street towards me and my kids. I'm worried, right? I'm in front of them. I'm keeping them behind me and we're getting away from that dog. I don't care if he's friendly because I don't know that and I'm not taking the chance when he charges and now all of a sudden I have to fight off an Akita who's attacking my kids. And I'm, choosing that breed just over and over again, but this goes obviously for many others. If I see a golden, I'm way less worried. Now, could that golden attack my kids? Absolutely, right? If that golden comes running at us, I'm not letting it get past me to get to my children. Not a chance, but I'm a lot less worried. So you do need to think about breeds, right? If you're out, whether it's on leash or off, and you see a guardian breed dog or a tough breed dog, you need to be a little bit more worried. Doesn't mean you scream and run, right? But if the dog's off leash, you need to be extra worried. If they're on leash, watch the handler. Is that dog under control? So most of these dog attacks we see, most of these issues are either dogs that are off leash, and if you've got a Rott wandering the neighborhood off leash and you don't know it, you're probably not a great owner, right? Something's gone wrong at that point. So I'm certainly not going to trust that dog. But if they're on leash, watch them. See if that owner knows what they're doing. So if they're heeling that dog and it's under control, and the owner as they pass you is keeping the dog engaged on them, I'm going to trust it a heck of a lot more than if I see that dog pulling on leash. And absolutely, I'm going to worry more based upon the breed. So when you go to get a dog, do research, right? Don't just get a breed because it was in a recent movie or it's cute or it's cool or it seems tough. Do research, figure out what you want. And I'm sure there's going to be, like I said, people that are saying, you're an idiot. My first dog was a Malinois and it's perfect. And if that's the case, great. But we get calls every single day from people who got that Malinois or got that Akita and it was their first dog and it's not perfect because they didn't learn enough first. So get an easy breed. There's so many out there. Do your research. Labradors are great, of course. I've already mentioned Goldens are great. Get one of those. Learn how to train, learn how to socialize, learn how to live with a dog properly. And if you've enjoyed it and you think, you know what, I trained my Golden for 30 minutes a day and that was kind of fun. I enjoyed it. I want a dog that I need to train 2 hours a day. Well, now maybe a Malinois makes sense, right? But if you trained that Golden at a half hour a day and you were like, oh my gosh, that was an inconvenience. I don't want to do that. I don't want to walk them all the time. Then you have just learned you should not get a tough breed dog because you're going to have trouble. So let me know what you think in the comments. Hopefully this helps people. If I can convince one person to not get the right dog for them, I'm going to consider this a success. That's the goal here. Get a dog that's going to make you happy, right? That's what dogs are for. So you go and get the wrong dog, you're unhappy or you're scared, the dog is unhappy, the dog is scared, maybe someone gets bit, maybe someone gets killed, a dog gets attacked, whatever. All of those things happen, and you can prevent so many of them by just getting the right breed in the first place. If you need help, this is not meant to be a plug for our services, but we do have an option, breed selection thing we'll walk you through to figure out the right breed for you. It's an awesome service, but you can also just go onto Google and type in easy dog breeds. And if you go to a shelter or you go to a breeder, you should be talking to them, right, and picking their brain. And, I guess here I am off on another tangent, right? But if a breeder or a rescue is giving you a challenging breed dog as a first-time dog owner, and they're like, yeah, it'll be fine, it's a nice dog, that is terrible. At that point, I would say in blanket statement, that is not a good rescue or that is not a good breeder. And I like breeders, I like rescues. They both serve really important roles in our society. But if you go to a rescue and they're like, oh, this rot mix, yeah, he loves people, he's cool, and you've never had dogs, that's insane. That makes no sense. They need to be steering you to an easy dog, and that rot mix needs to go to someone who has some sort of tough dog experience. Same with a breeder. If you call any guardian breed breeder and you say, I want a dog, and they're like, cool, send me a check, that's a red flag, right? They should be asking you questions. So you call an Akita breeder, their first question should be, have you owned an Akita before? And if you say no, what breeds have you owned? And if they hear none, or, well, I owned a Golden or a Lab once, then they should be asking you a lot of follow-up questions, right? What is your level of dog experience? And even if you say, hey, I've owned an Akita, their question should be, how did it go, right? Did you like the dog? Did it work out? Has it been friendly? To try to get these dogs in the hands of people that can handle them rather than people that can't. Thanks for watching. Drop me a comment. Let me know what you think.